Okay, here's a lesson I had to learn over the course of the last, what, 16 years? Last 16 years? So, what I had to learn is that, well, I had to learn a lot of things, but regarding friendships, um, God began showing me this in 2011 that I was validating myself through relationships. Oh, man. Um, And what that looked like was I had all these people around me. And truth be told, part of it was the trauma response. Like I had this need to be liked and accepted. And so I had all these people around me. And these people had varying reasons for being around me. You know, I had all of these guy friends, all of these girlfriends, and would hang out and go out and party and stuff. And I had people that I had reached out to and pursued them to be mentors. And golly, as that time I was in Charleston was very painful, like excruciatingly painful emotionally. And even my time in New Orleans was painful, but the time in Charleston taught me, and the time in New Orleans, but especially in Charleston, it taught me that I really needed to really pray and discern the nature of the relationships around me and discern what spirits were at work within people, because some of the stuff I went through was just crazy. Like I had this one girl, I had kept her around me for years because I misinterpreted the Bible of saying, you know, the Bible says keep your friends close and your enemies closer. I misinterpreted and misunderstood what that meant. And for me, like I kept putting myself in harm's way with this girl. I kept trying to get her to like me, trying to get her to accept me when, you know, she had her own trauma. And as a result, like a lot of our head butts, our bumping of heads was due to her own trauma. And I just couldn't see that. Like one of the biggest lessons I learned during my time in New Orleans is that communication is more heavily based on the other person's perspective. Like, and their perspective is skewed by what they see, what they've experienced. We see things as we are versus how they are. And so as a result of that, I got my feelings hurt a lot. Like, and I had to say, thank God for how he was speaking to me at that time. God was speaking to me in my dreams. So I knew that God was telling me, oh, this person is not for you, because he showed me clear as day in a dream. And he showed me clear as day about, you know, I would pray and be like, so I didn't have the courage to end this relationship because I really loved and cared for this person, but I knew the relationship wasn't for me. So I was like, God, if this is not what you have for me, I pray that you would end it. And the next day, we had a conversation and the relationship was over. And I knew that's what God wanted for me. And then I prayed and asked God to just show me the nature of the people around me. And he began showing me, like, you can't relate to these people in the way that you want to relate to them anymore. Like, I'm taking you somewhere. And for me, it was a literal taking. God moved me from Charleston to New Orleans. And, you know, I was doing a lot of the legwork in the relationships to sustain those friendships. And I've done that my whole life. Like, I felt like I had to work to prove my worth to people. I had to accept any and everything from people to prove my worth to them. And a big lesson that I've learned, like, I did this assessment. It's called a DISC assessment. And there was a pretty big disconnect between what other people saw in me and what I saw in myself. And what I've come to understand that as is that I've changed. And, you know, who I presented myself to be all these years, a lot of it was due to trauma. A lot of it is due to me being the oldest child and only daughter. A lot of it is due to, you know, the nature of my family dynamic. A lot of it is due to, like, I'm just very driven, not quite all the way type A, but type A in a lot of areas. And so all of those different factors, like, make me who I am. And are the reason I showed up the way that I did, including accepting what I accepted in friendships. To the point, God reminded me earlier, like I had like I considered these people to be like my sister. I don't have a biological sister, and so I would call them like my sister, and I considered them to be my best friends. And a lot of those instances, I was not that person's best friend. They were my best friend because I was giving and doing and showing up and being there. But, you know, it's been several scenarios over the years. Like when I had my son, I saw, you know, people weren't for me the way I was for them. When I moved away to New Orleans, I saw it. When I moved back to Charleston, I saw it. When I moved to Charlotte, I saw it. When I moved back to Atlanta, I saw it. And, you know, I really just began to see, like, I saw myself, like, why am I showing up this way? Why am I holding on to these relationships, holding on to these people who are not, you know, pouring into me the way I'm pouring into them? Why am I befriending all of these people? What need am I trying to meet by having all these people around me who don't love me, who don't care about me, or who have some sort of ulterior motive to get something from me? And part of it is we have to just give people grace. But the other part of it is we need to do the inner healing, the trauma work. We need to address the traumas. Like, how is your relationship with your dad? Why do you have these relationships that you have with men? Both men and women can have daddy issues. How is your relationship with your mom? Was she uplifting and encouraging, or was she berating you or and tearing you down? And so how does that reflect in how you have relationships with women and how you view women, both male and female? Like, we can all have mommy issues and daddy issues. What other traumas did you experience? Were you abused in any kind of way? Were you exposed to death or loss at a very young age? Were you confronted with, like, the very, you know, fickleness of life at a young age? Like, that can affect how you show up in relationships and the people you hold on to. And I am just really grateful now. Like, even though this has been an isolating season for me, like, I know it's temporary. I'm in school. I work full time. I have a boyfriend. I have my child. And like, my closer friends live nowhere near me. Like, my nearest friend, aside from like, my nearest friend is like about 10 minutes away, but like my best friend's over an hour. They're in different states, you know, like they're not close by. Like my very best friend is home, back 4 hours away. And so I've grown to accept the beautiful thing of technology, of us having phones. So I'm able to text my best friends and talk to them and keep in touch with them. And I've also grown and matured enough to accept, like, hey, even if there's distance, or even if there's times where you don't talk, that doesn't mean that they don't love you. They're just living life and experiencing life like you. And I've also, you know, lightened up on that use of friend, like, and all the other labels attached to it, homeboy, homegirl, whatever you want to call it. Like, I don't call everybody my friend, and I can acknowledge that. Like, I have friend groups, but they would, you know, a former friend of mine at this point told me about this, and I ended up hearing about it in therapy a few years back. Like, there's this concept, like, where you have this innermost circle, and that circle should only be a few people in that innermost circle. Then that outer circle is the next group of people. They're close, but they're not as close as that inside group. Then you go out to the next circle. These people will be like your associates or your coworkers, and even that outermost circle is the people who are the furthest away from you. They don't know that much about you. Like, you may get along with them, you may have good relationships with them, but they're not that core group of people, and therefore they shouldn't have access to that core group of information. My problem was I was oversharing. I was sharing too much. Yes, I share a lot here now, but it's based on what God has led me to share and what God has told me to share from a place of wisdom, of like, I experienced this Don't do this. I learned this from doing this. Don't do that, you know? And so I'm really grateful because I can see things differently now. Like, you know, so many scenarios and situations I could have been prevented had I been just more prayerful about my friends. And, you know, everybody unfortunately does not learn from like experience, well, does not learn from the experience of someone else. Like I've learned from my own experiences, but I've also, thank God, have had the wisdom to be able to discern what's going on with other people who are close to me and see like, oh, that's not a good person. That person ain't your friend. And, you know, as God has opened my eyes about my own relationships, I'm able to see it and spot it quicker in other people. And so that being said, my prayer for you is that you would ask God to give you a spirit of discernment, that one, he would show you yourself. Ask God to show you you. What is it about you that has attracted the people around you? What is it about you that feels like you need to have all these people around you if you're that type of person? If you were like me, where you had all these people around you, what were you trying to run from? Like for me, I was running from grieving. I was running from like, you know, not really wanting to fully deal with the loss of my dad. I was also, you know, running from not dealing with unresolved trauma, but it caught up with me anyway. And, you know, God clear as day would tell me things. You are validating yourself through having all these people around you. And what are you getting from it? Nothing. I got, you know, yes, I got some friendships, but 90% of those people, if I'm 100% honest, 90% of those people I don't talk to anymore. Like, I may reach out and say, hey, how you doing here and there? But 90% of those people I don't talk to anymore. And my other question for you, of course, like I said, ask God to show you yourself, and start digging up those heart issues, digging up those wounds. Like, why are you pulling all these people in? What void are you trying to fill that probably should be filled with God? Like, what are you trying to do God's job for him by having all these people around you? Like, what need for attention is it that you're trying to get met? Like, do you like the attention that you have all these people around you? Do you like being the center of attention? Do you like having all these relationships? Are there some more deeper things that you need to address? Like, you know, sometimes we're putting on a mask for the world, but we need to take that mask off for ourselves and actually do the work of digging up those traumas and addressing the things that are, like addressing the elephants in the room. And as I think the biggest thing in all of this, especially if you're a parent, like, you really need to be prayerful and be discerning, because, you know, if you don't deal with your stuff, it's a very strong likelihood and possibility that you can pass trauma to your kids because of what you refuse to deal with. You can hurt other people because you are holding on to trauma, and you are using people as to plug the wound, and you are not really doing the inner work and the inner healing you need to do. And like I said, you know, I miss my friends. I wish we all lived like in a little the same neighborhood, and I could go walk next door and see them, or walk across the street. Like, we all had our own little friend village, and, you know, I could be a more active part of my godchildren's lives and my nieces' lives. I wish that, but I also recognize that that's not what God has for me. But God, the love that we have for each other as friends can sustain the distance. And so my other prayer for you would be that you would leave behind the people that God is telling you to let go of. Because like I said, sometimes people have ulterior motives. Like, you may not see it, and it ultimately is the spirit at work. I would pray, well, let's back that up. I want to pray that, one, God would expose people's motives to you. Two, that you would accept and receive it. Like, when he shows it to you, when he says it to you clear as day, that you need to close this door, you need to end this relationship, or it's going to go bad, in this friendship, or it's going to go bad. But most of all, that you would allow God to fill that void, and allow him to send the people that he wants in your life, and that you would instead stop trying to do his job for him. So that's all I have. I hope y'all have a great night. Oh, bye.